Hello, hello. Alrighty, guys. So, on-chain FX. So, usually when we talk about FX, it's usually US stablecoins to local currency, and we're talking about off-chain and on-chain. When we say off-chain, it's settled off-chain, so centralized exchanges, P2P, O2C, over-the-counter, and then Aerodrome, Curve, Uniswap. These are new venues where you could swap US stablecoins for local stablecoins. Okay, so why on-chain? Like, why not just stick to off-chain venues like peer-to-peer? So you don't have guarantees on the market making liquidity. You don't have settlement guarantees. You could send one end of the transaction, not be sure if it settles. You don't know who you're interacting with, so there might be counterparty risk. And then you can't do things like lending. And there's much more you can't do when you don't have on-chain. So why is it so hard? So I pulled this article from the IMF, and the first part of the abstract is super important. Some central banks have maintained overvalued official exchange rates while unable to ensure that supply of foreign exchange meets legitimate demand for the current account transactions at that price. And basically means whatever the price the central bank says it's worth, it's not worth. And you see this all the time as you're in Argentina right now. So this is from the World Bank, and you would see a list of countries. There's the official rate it's trading at, and then the parallel market. So here in Argentina, let's see what it is. So Yahoo Finance, think says 1391 official. The dollar rate is saying 1365, 1415. And then there's the parallel rate for USDC. You get 1456. So all of this just shows how cluttered and hard it is to get the price supply for what FX is worth. Now, we want to get to a point where you could go from USDC to a local stablecoin, like let's say you're importing from Indonesia, IDRX, and all the problems lie in this USDC to IDRX, because how do you make the market for FX? So, for instance, you could still do centralized exchanges or OTC, but in this transaction, you could settle. They say the fee is free, but really the fee is the FX rate, where the person is commenting that the FX rate, they basically lost 5 to 10%. So let's talk about how you could go about solving this with ViFi. So traditionally, you could swap USDT for USDC, but what if you wanted to swap local currency for USDC? So in this market, we wanted to swap about 80,000 local currency, which is worth about 10,000 USDC. Now, if you were to do this on Uniswap with a 200K TVL, you would practically change the price from 8 to 8.8 with one swap, because it's super capital inefficient. Whereas if you were to do it with ViFi, you would move the pool to about 8.08, and you would take about 1% slippage. And the question is, how could you achieve that with the same TVL? So what ViFi is trying to do is split how LPs deploy the capital. So for a traditional AMM, you have this pool of USDC, and the local currency here is TTDC, 100K, 100K. But we're saying, what if you had a stable swap sandwich? You have two curve pools at the edges, and you have our virtual fiat environment stuck in the center. And you could swap USDC to USDV, which is our native currency within the virtual fiat environment. Then you could synthetically convert USDV to TTDV, which would be our synthetic version of the Trinidad and Tobago dollar. And then that synthetic TTDV is converted or swapped to TTDC in a local stable swap pool. The two stable swap pools would be low slippage, while the larger deep liquidity is in the virtual fiat environment. So then we've just explored another magic box. What happens in the virtual fiat environment? So the idea is that we take this USDC to USDV, we split the USDV into a reserve token and a fiat token, and then we have a redemption token, fiat token pool. So in a white box and a black box, you're simply converting the USD to this virtual fiat. And if we walk through an example with the Argentinian peso, you could you could convert this USDV into one redemption token, and the Oracle rate from the bank is 1350. then you swap that one redemption token for, let's say right now it's with 100 fiat tokens. And that is how you could go from 1 USDV to 1450 fiat tokens, which would be synthetic Argentinian pesos. And effectively, what happens here is the entire market-making liquidity for buying and selling of USDV lives in this redemption token, fiat token pool. So if a lot of people are demanding to go to US, the redemption tokens rise in value. And if a lot of people are going from US back down to fiat, the redemption tokens are being dumped into the pool and goes down. It's capital efficient because you're not making the market across the entire liquidity. You're only making it on the parallel market. So it leads to better slippage. And then what does this look like endgame? Multi-currency. You should be able to then supply liquidity for Colombia, Brazil, Kenya, Nigeria, Indonesia, any of these emerging market currencies that need liquidity. And the liquidity is separated where there's a virtual strategy vault where you could stake USDV and it deploys liquidity across all the markets. And effectively, you could deploy liquidity into emerging markets, earn FX fees plus the risk-free rate as a new source of yield and a capital-efficient emerging market DEX. So in the rehashing what the pipeline would look like, someone from the US is importing from Indonesia. You could go USDC to USDV to IDRV to IDRX. All that is one atomic swap. And in this example here, we're talking about USDC, but you could have someone from Nigeria with CNGN import from Indonesia, and it's all capital efficient. So ViFi is trying to bring liquidity to emerging markets. And yeah, I actually spent I have 5 minutes to go through. So let me I was speedrunning this. So what happens here is you have all these what do you call it, currency channels where you are moving liquidity in, let's say, Colombia, Brazil, Kenya, Nigeria. And then all these currencies have these local stable swaps with local units of account. And what this allows you to do now is someone could, let's say in Brazil, put money in Brazilian unit of account. They stake their Brazilian real, and they could earn USDV fees from creating this pre-funding pool. So let's say you put down 10K of Brazilian real, and your entire life is denominated in Brazilian real. You live day to day, you spend groceries, you have rent, mortgage, and then what happens is you could put your unit of account on chain in BRL1, BRLZ, whichever the local currency is. You could earn USDV for putting liquidity in that pool. And then if there's too much TVL in that stable swap, the fee split from the virtual fiat environment to that stable swap could be decreased. And if the virtual fiat environment requires more liquidity in that stable swap, it could increase the fee split. So there's this relationship between the virtual fiat environment where the bulk of the depth of liquidity executes, and then these local stable swaps where it shares in all the FX fees. So now emerging market currencies could stake their liquidity and then earn emerging USDV fees for their liquidity. And effectively, this becomes local yield instruments. And what that allows is for all economies to come on chain. So most of the conversations are always very dollar denominated, or how could we get the dollar into every economy? But nobody is trying to solve how could we bring local yield, and by having people stake local currencies, they could earn USD fees, and then this all grows the economy, because effectively you have these local currencies that are going to fully collapse, but you have this mutualistically beneficial channel where import-export is going to happen. And when this import-export happens, the people who stake the liquidity and provide that market liquidity earn fees, and then that get redistributed into each economy. And instead of thinking about it as a straight dollarization bet and how we could distribute the dollar and short-term treasury bonds to everybody, you could bring actual economies on-chain. And when you have this kind of FX liquidity on-chain, you could then bring new types of products like lending. Right now, you can't do lending on-chain because the market is too illiquid. And if you had to sell the assets to actually cover your position, you would effectively get screwed. So these assets and these local currencies right now, you can't lend with them on DeFi. But with these kind of primitives, things like lending could be done because each virtual fiat environment could be at any point terminated. Let's say the Nigerian market, the Nigerian government chooses to freeze the currency, or they do not want the issuer to issue currency anymore. We could literally terminate the virtual fiat environment and the entire market maker is recouped with USDV. So it does protect the international deployment of capital from local jurisdictional risk. So, ViFi is trying to bring emerging market economies on-chain in a mutualistically beneficial economy, and it's also permissionless. You would note that a lot of these current fintechs apps, if you want to get the parallel rate, there's a lot of KYC, there's a lot of haggling with how the fintech provider actually deploy the funds and the size of the trades. Whereas ViFi is true to DeFi, where it's permissionless, it's all on-chain, it's all transparent. And we believe that being the first capital-efficient DEX for FX, that a lot of fintechs could just build on us permissionlessly, and we could start building the kind of liquidity to do import-export and small to medium enterprise, and really, instead of trying to bank the unbanked, bring all the major market economies on-chain. So thank you.